Hey, welcome to my channel. I am Dr. Shareece. I help Black men and women heal from trauma and toxic relationships. And today I wanted to do a review on this article that I think covers a hot topic, especially with modern dating and modern relationships and whether people are getting married or not and how many people are opting out of marriage and all the things, right? I just thought this was such an interesting title. America's Marriage Material Shortage by Derek Thompson. This is from The Atlantic. Adults are significantly less likely to be married or to live with a partner than they used to be. I mean, a lot of things have changed. Perhaps you've heard young people aren't dating anymore. News media and social media are awash in commentary about the decline in youth romance. It's visible in the corporate data, with dating app engagement taking a hit, and it's visible in the survey data where the share of 12th graders who say they've dated have fallen from about 85% in the 1980s to less than 50% in the early 2020s, with the decline particularly steep in the past few years. I think there are so many reasons why kids, right, 17 and 18-year-olds are not prioritizing dating now. The primary function of marriage was economic, and we don't have to partner for economic reasons anymore, like primarily anymore. A young woman can become financially independent on her own. She doesn't have to have a husband to do it. When in those, before women's rights was a thing, like we literally couldn't do anything without men. We can do whatever we want now. So I think it's natural that kids don't want to seriously date and marry by the time they're 20. Naturally, young people's habits are catnip to news commentators, but although I consider the story of declining youth romance important, I don't find it particularly mysterious. In my essay on the antisocial century, I reported that young people have retreated from all manner of physical world relationships, whether because of smartphones, overparenting, or a combination of factors. Compared with previous generations of teens, they have fewer friends, spend significantly less time with the friends they do have, attend fewer parties, and spend much more time alone. We are in a loneliness epidemic. I can see this. Romantic relationships theoretically imply a certain physicality, so it's easy to examine that the collapse of physical world socializing for young people would involve the decline of romance. Okay. A certain okay. I think this is an opinion. I don't have any data on the physicality. I think it is true. More people are spending time online and not at parties, but in a way, I think the world is more unsafe. America, particularly the guns, like kids are doing like school shooter drills. In the 1980s, that wasn't a thing. Like when Columbine happened, that shocked the world and our system so much, but a lot of things have changed. Adults have a way of projecting their anxieties and realities onto their children. In the case of romance, the fixation on young people masks a deeper and, to me, far more mysterious phenomenon. What is happening to adult relationships? American adults are significantly less likely to be married or to live with a partner than they used to be. The national marriage rate is hovering near its all-time low, while the share of women under 65 who aren't living with a partner has steadily grown since the 1980s. The past decade seems to be the only period since at least the 1970s when women under 35 were more likely to live with their parents than with a spouse. I think we go from we swing from one pendulum end to the other when evolving, right? Correcting. I often give an example to parents who are setting boundaries with their kids, like they're starting new rules or, training them to act in a more appropriate manner. What often happens when parents enact new rules is that the kids' behaviors get worse. But it's important to be consistent in the parenting so that the child will understand we're not backing up from this, and so you can come down, right? You can get in line. I think because women were subjugated, forced, oppressed for so long that all they want to do now is be free. And the idea of partnering with a man who typically, when it comes to the relationship, he is wanting a lot of labor done for him, a lot of the mental load, a lot of the household duties are on him. In addition to that woman also working full time outside of the home, in addition to that woman being the primary caretaker for the kids, I think a lot of women have decided, I could just raise my kids by myself. I could just live with my parents until I can afford a house. Like, I don't have to do this thing with a man because I don't need him for the economic safety. Why would I put myself in that situation where, from my perspective, men have not done enough of the emotional work to be marriage material? People's lives are diverse, and so are their wants and desires and circumstances. It's hard and perhaps impossible to identify a tiny number of factors that explain hundreds of millions of people's decisions to couple up, split apart, or remain single. But according to Lyman Stone, a researcher at the Institute for Family Studies, the most important reason marriage and coupling are declining in the US is actually quite straightforward. Many young men are falling behind economically. Accurate. They're nowhere near on pace as they were 30 years ago. 40 years ago? The 80s is 40 years ago. Nowhere near. And a lot of that has to do with the way the government is running. A lot of these efforts to keep certain groups down have also harmed men in a way that has made it hard for them to focus, right? What I want men to focus on is like this emotional intelligence, emotional maturity. But how can you do that when you can't even get financially stable? Because the economy has been catering to rich white men for so long and forgetting about the young men who are coming from working class families, who are getting their bachelor's degrees. Where are the jobs? Right now, they are laying people off left and right. Even in the federal government, they're trying to get rid of people. What was once steady income for people to be financially secure, to invest in buying a home, cannot do. Who's buying a house now? The people you know who are buying houses are like in those small groups of people who either come from money, a little bit of money, like they're getting help from parents to buy their home, or they make a lot of money to buy a home, like a decent home in a nice neighborhood. Okay. And when I say a lot of money, I mean like more money than most people. Like, who's buying a home with a $36,000 salary? Okay. A marriage or romantic partnership can be many things: friendship, love, sex, someone to gossip with, someone to remind you to take the trash out. But practically speaking, Stone told me, marriage is also insurance. Women have historically relied on men to act as insurance policies against the threat of violence, the risk of poverty. To some, this might sound like an old-fashioned, even reactionary description of marriage, but its logic still applies. I can't argue against that. Men's odds of being in a relationship today are still highly correlated with their income. Women do not typically invest in long-term relationships with men who have nothing to contribute economically. I think it would be less than smart to do that, right? It's also why I wouldn't live with a man without being married, because marriage is like insurance. There are a lot of benefits that the government gives to the people who are married that is outside of love, right? I'm not going to marry someone I don't love, but I'm not going to live with someone and build a life with someone that I'm not married to. To me, that part doesn't make sense, because I'm thinking, yeah, money, insurance, security, it's important. In the past few decades, young and especially less educated men's income has stagnated, even as women have charged into the workforce and seen their college graduation rates soar. For single, non-college educated men, average inflation-adjusted earnings at age 45 have fallen by nearly 25% in the past half century, while for the country as a whole, average real earnings have more than doubled. As a result, a lot of young men today just don't look like what women have come to think of as marriage material, he said. In January, the Financial Times' John Byrne Murdoch published an analysis of the relationship recession that lends strong support to Stone's theory. Contrary to the idea that declining fertility in the US is mostly about happily childless DINKs, dual income, no kid couples, okay, the drop in relationship formation is steepest among the poor, he observes. I asked Byrne Murdoch to share his analysis of current population survey data so that I could take a closer look. What I found is that in the past 40 years, coupling has declined more than twice as fast among Americans without a college degree compared with college degrees. This represents a dramatic historic inversion. In 1980, Americans ages 25 to 34 without a bachelor's degree were more likely than college graduates to get married. Today, it's flipped, and the education gap in coupling is widening every year. Marriage produces wealth by pooling two people's income, but conversely, wealth also produces marriage. Yes, which is why you know, when people talk about not wanting to like build a man up, I don't believe in like funding a man, but it is true that two together are stronger than one and can get more done in a shorter amount of time than a single man. A very successful men are partnered. I'm just saying. Contraception technology might also play a role. Before cheap birth control became widespread in the 1970s, sexual activity was generally yoked to commitment. Yeah. It was a cultural norm for a man to marry a girl if he'd gotten her pregnant, and single parenthood was uncommon. Yes. But as the married economists George Akerlof and Janet Yellen observed in a famous 1996 paper, contraception helped disentangle sex and marriage, which is why this is what I remember when I was in graduate school and I thought about why there were two things. One is about like gay people, like trans people, like this fear of femininity, right? Because people don't usually have a lot of negative beliefs about gay women. It's usually about gay men because the gay men that they can visibly tell is gay is often quite feminine. But it's a similar thing when it comes to whether it's pro life or pro choice. At the root of it, it's about agency of a woman's body. And if you take away a woman's ability to decide whether or not she wants to keep a child, you can have a lot of control over that woman. Because an unmarried woman who has a child is more likely to have more life challenges, more financial challenges than a woman who's not. But I think that's part of why they've dismantled Roe v. Wade. It's not, I think population, they do want more white children. I think that's part of it. But I think the other part of it is trying to get women back in what they think is their place. And if we stop you from, being able to control this aspect, we can make it really hard, right? That even there's a new law for a marriage, like in one of the southern states. It's not a real marriage, but it counts as getting some kind of rights, and it's harder to get out of it. Yeah, I think you can't do like no. What is the marriage where there's no reason. You don't really cite irreconcilable differences. You can't cite irreconcilable differences. The only way you can get out of the marriage is if they're actively abusive or he abandoned the family or something like that. I think all these things are connected in the government. I don't know if it's government, like white, rich, racist men. I don't know. People who are in control and want to continue brainwashing the people and making them work as little minion slaves in whatever their operation is. I think it's wild. Couples could sleep together without any implicit promise to stay together. Ultimately, Akerlof and Yellen posit the availability of contraception, which gave women the tools to control the number and the timing of their kids, decimated the tradition of shotgun marriages, and therefore contributed to an increase in children born to low-income single parents. The theory that the relationship recession is driven by young men falling behind seems to hold up in the US. But what about around the world? I think it's similar around the world. Rates of coupling are declining throughout Europe as well. They are declining in like Asian countries too, like China. In England and Wales, the marriage rate for people under 30 has declined by more than 50% since 1990. And it's not just Europe. The gender researcher Alice Evans has shown that coupling is down just about everywhere. In Iran, annual marriages plummeted by 40% in 10 years. Some Islamic authorities blame Western values and social media for the shift. They might have a point. When women are exposed to more Western media, Evan argues, their life expectations expand. Fitted with TikTok and Instagram and other windows into Western culture, young women around the world can seek the independence of a career over the codependency or worse, the outright loss of freedom that might come with marriage in their own country. Social media, a woman veterinarian in Tehran told the Financial Times, also glamorizes the single life by showing how unmarried people lead carefree and successful lives. People keep comparing their partners to mostly fake idols and social platforms. That's true. That's true. I do think it's important to be exposed to different types of living, but I do think social media definitely sells a dream, a lie, yeah, that might not lead people to really making the decision that's in their best interest. This video is sponsored by me. Check out my website, spiritsoulsense.com, for a couple of free downloads. I also have my poetry ebook for sale, and you can also purchase my artwork and merch to help support my channel. According to Evans, several trends are driving this global decline in coupling. Smartphones and social media may have narrowed many young people's lives, pinning them to their couches and bedrooms, but they've also opened women's minds to the possibility of professional and personal development. When men fail to support their dreams, relationships fail to flourish, and the sexes drift apart. If I had to sum up this big, messy story in a sentence, it would be this: coupling is declining around the world as women's expectations rise and lower income men's fortunes fall. This combination is subverting the traditional role of straight marriage, in which men are seen as necessary for the economic insurance of their family. Oh, this is a bar. This is a bar. I've been consistently saying that men have not risen to the level that women want them to, right? Over the last 30 years, men have not changed much. Y'all still want to do the provide and protect thing when there are so many other things that women are looking for in a relationship. That's why they leave. Like, women will have multiple kids with you and still leave you because you're not giving her what it is she really needs. This is a bar. It's the lower income men's fortunes fall for me. Oh my goodness. So why does all this matter? Two of the more urgent sociological narratives of this moment are declining fertility and rising unhappiness. The relationship recession makes contact with both. First, marriage and fertility are tightly interconnected. Unsurprisingly, one of the strongest predictors of declining fertility around the world is declining coupling rates, as Bern Murdoch has written. Second, marriage is strongly associated with happiness. Okay. According to General Social Survey data, Americans' self-described life satisfaction has been decreasing for decades. I wonder how much of that is because of partnering, because a lot of Americans, a lot of white Americans hate seeing other groups of people thrive. In a 2023 analysis of the GSS data, the University of Chicago economist Sam Peltzman concluded that marriage was more correlated with this measure of happiness than any other variable he considered, including income. As Stone would rush to point out here, marriage itself is correlated with income. Oh, I think it's mostly income. The social crisis of our time is not just that Americans are more socially isolated than ever, but also that social isolation is rising alongside romantic isolation as the economic and cultural trajectories of men and women move in opposite directions. And perhaps most troubling, the Americans with the least financial wealth also seem to have the least social wealth, so to speak. It is the poor who might especially need the support of friends and partners who have the fewest close friends and the fewest long-term partners. Money might not buy happiness, but it can buy the things that buy happiness. I completely agree. And what does this do? There's no call to action here in this article. That's the end. What I think is more helpful is these men actually making friends, getting off of their phones, getting off of their gaming, going outside into the real world, and putting themselves to a higher standard, focusing on improving their life in whatever way it needs to improve. And then if you also want a relationship, part of that is making yourself competitive in the dating marketplace so that you can get the woman you want or a woman close to what you want. But if you have no money, it's already a choice for a woman to partner with a man who has money because he's still a man, okay? But if you also have no money, like, what are we even doing? So you lazy and you have no purpose and you have no money and you're emotionally immature. Why would a woman partner with you? Why? I think all those things are areas for men to focus on. And I do think there are more men calling other men in to hold them to task of becoming better. Like, be a better human. Yeah, be a better human. And I do think that you will get what you want. I think this is such an interesting topic. I completely agree. Like, marriage material, like the men women actually want are not like in droves. Like, that is not what you see. And then when you go and look on social media, the loudest ones are the wrongest ones. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Let me know what you think about the article, about marriage material, about dating right now, 2025, modern dating. I do think I love that women are raising their standards, and I would not encourage a woman to lower her standards, but acknowledging that men are gonna take a while to catch up, right? I don't know when this is gonna happen. We'll see. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel if you like talking about relationships and all the things. And thank you for watching.